Good morning, fellows from the East Coast, West Coast, and around the world. We have our February episode of the Fellow Project, our Fireside Chat. I'm going to start out with Dr. Wilson giving us announcements, and then you'll get to meet some of the members of our Bariatric Surgery Training Committee. Dr. Wilson, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Happy February. And again, I'm Rickesha Wilson, General and Bariatric Surgeon. And your co-host too for the Fellow Project. So a few announcements for you to take note of. First, the ASMBS annual meeting is this year in Washington, D.C. It's June 15th through the 19th, and registration opens on March 11th. So make sure you do what you can, submit your time off request now so that you can participate and make it to the meeting. It's always a great time, great learning, great networking, which is important. And there's always a ton to learn and things focused on fellows too. So that's exciting coming up. The next bariatric happy hour is February the 27th. And the topic is the future of surgery, harnessing AI for smarter, safer, and faster procedures. And so remember to register for that or tune in if you've already registered for that one. Other things, the surgical mentorship application cycle is open from February 3rd to March the 10th. And so that's available for early career surgeons to be mentored by mid-career surgeons, and then senior surgeons to mentor mid-career surgeons. So something to keep in mind. I know you're fellows and you'll be starting your independent practice soon for those who haven't started that yet. But that's available and it's a 1-year commitment and you'll meet at least quarterly. Also, the ASMBS 2025 Research Grant Award applications are from February 24th to April 7th. I think applications will focus on a certain topic, I think ending the stigma of obesity. And then for those who are members of the START program, their first open house is February 12th to tune in. And then lastly, just make sure as you go throughout the year to keep track of your requirements for your ASMBS certification. So your inpatient and outpatient encounters and your case logs, make sure you know the number of cases you're on track to get so that you won't have to scramble at the end. And yeah, hope you enjoy the webinar and the discussions for today. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wilson. So I'm going to just go around Robin to have everybody introduce themselves to our fellows. Dr. Husain, please. It's
Good
early for
morning.
you.
Good morning. My name is Farah Husain. I'm the Division Chief of Bariatric Surgery. I'm the Vice Chair of Quality at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix. And I've been in practice now so many years, it'll give away my age, but it's been a while.
Thank you for joining this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Kennedy, please.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Kennedy. I am in solo private practice in Dallas, Texas. I've run my own practice for about 15 years and have been through academic and group practice prior to that. I'm a PGY 30, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Dr. Shariff, you're next.
Hi, I'm a metabolic and bariatric surgeon in Pennsylvania, and I am a director of robotics and the vice chair of the department here.
Dr. Dan.
Adrian Dan, I'm a bariatric surgeon first and foremost in Akron, Ohio. I work at Summa Health System, Northeast Ohio Medical University, and just really happy to be joining you guys for this panel this morning.
Dr. Wilson, even though they know you, so got to introduce yourself.
And again, Rickesha Wilson. I'm now in my 4th year of practice. I do general and bariatric surgery at Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, at one of our regional hospitals, Hillcrest Hospital now. But I do academics, teaching, research, and the like.
And I'm Shaina Eckhouse. You've been stuck with me and Dr. Wilson for a long time, but I'm the medical director for bariatric surgery at Duke Health in Raleigh and Durham, North Carolina, and the chair of the Bariatric Surgery Training Committee, taking that over from Dr. Dan who is a big shoes to fill and cannot fill. So we're really excited that you guys submitted your questions to us over the last few months. And so really the questions that you guys submitted to us came into these buckets. A lot of them on contract negotiation, how to run a clinic, how to be prepared when you start your practice, or what's your early learning, how to start a new bariatric program, how do you work with your medical specialists in the current climate of growing anti-obesity medications. And my favorite, how do I filter the bad information online about optimal nutrition, along with in the setting of kind of the current education that we get in medical school and residency, and then how to find a job, which is kind of a summation of everything that we're going to talk about before then. So I figured we would just start to go around the room a little bit and start with, maybe the simple thing of how to find a job. I think maybe starting there, and then we can filter into the next steps. So once you find the job, what are your next steps? It would make sense. And so I'd love to get Dr. Dan's opinion on how to find a job in the current climate.
Okay, well, thank you for, I didn't know I was going to start things off, but that's a really big concern for our current fellows. And things have changed. Things have changed from 20 years ago when we had an overabundance of patients and you found approach to obesity treatment and not enough bariatric surgeons. They used to roll out the proverbial red carpet to recruit a bariatric surgeon. And we've come to a point where the supply has outmatched the demand, so to say. And our field continues to evolve, right? There's now new procedures, there's endoscopic procedures, there's actual medications that are very effective. We've had nothing of the likes in the past 20 years. So you as a surgeon have to evolve with that, and you have to determine and decide for yourself, are you a surgeon who will supplement your bariatric surgical practice through general surgery and taking call and acute care call and trauma call and doing other things? Or are you going to be an obesity doctor who's going to say, you know what, I'm going to embrace the new weapons that we have in our armamentarium, and also be able to treat patients with medication and with endoscopic procedures and the whole gamut, the whole spectrum of weapons that we have to combat obesity. So I think that's number one. You have to decide who you are and what kind of position you're going to look for. Look, in the words of Mark Twain, the news of the rumors of our death are greatly exaggerated. Bariatric surgery is here to stay. Okay, we have severe obesity, severe disease, severe metabolic dysfunction, diabetes that will still need to be treated with surgery. And the more right now I'm going through the exercise of going through the abstracts for the national meeting, the new data that's coming out, the new research that's being submitted is making it clearer and clearer to me, at least personally, that we're not going anywhere. Surgery is extremely important to complement what we can do with medical therapy. So I'd say stick to your guns. If you're committed, if you're passionate about being a bariatric surgeon, there will be room for the people who are going to focus their practice and commit to that discipline. And you will, certainly there's no shortage of people who need our expertise, right? 70% of the population is either overweight or obese. And there will be jobs for those who stick to it. So that's what I would say in a very broad answer, Shaina. The jobs will be out there, the need will be out there. It's not like it used to be, but we're not going anywhere. So keep calling hospitals in the regions you're interested in. Network with people, go to the national meetings, rub elbows with people who have jobs to offer, jobs to make yourself marketable, get your focused practice designation as soon as you can, get your certificate from the ASMBS for additional training, even get your obesity medicine certification. The more you have, the more qualified you'll be for that position when it does come up.
Dr. Wilson, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian, for those comments. And I just wanted to kind of put something on the end of that, that I've known that I've had colleagues experience. If you have a job in the bag early on, I would not keep interviewing for other jobs. Even maybe at your program and your fellowship, they've said you've already had conversations potentially about staying. I've known several people who have thought that they had a job in their hand, and then it gets taken away because something didn't work out, funding falls through. When I was a fellow, I was in discussions early with Cleveland Clinic about staying, but my program director was very shocked. He was like, why are people calling me about job interviews for you? You need to interview as much as you can and keep an open mind for as long as you can until you have a start date and you sign a contract, just because the culture and the market can change and people have the best intentions, and still they may not be the ones in control or who have the final say. So be careful of that and keep interviewing, even if you think you have something already negotiated.
Any other thoughts for this question? I think that was it's a tough time. I think right now because of the decline in our volumes, and there are still some jobs available. And so being smart and proactive and kind of thoughtful is really important. There's some websites that I can put in the chat to consider looking at. Job boards. ASMBS has a great job board that shows you what jobs are available and other even extended fellowships that are available online. Phages has a great job board. The American College of Surgeons. Indeed.com actually works out pretty well too. And then I've been a big fan of using LinkedIn and Doximity as well in the past. So there are more actual resources for helping you find a job than I think there ever have been. And so utilizing those can be helpful as well. Dr. Kennedy, I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of, okay, once you get the job, how do you negotiate your contract, especially, with your successful practice? I think you have a lot to bring to the table here.
So, and then my perspective, I negotiated my first job back when they were looking for people, and it was in academics. I think the academic negotiation of a job is very different than when you're looking in private practice. So I'm going to go to it as if you're looking to join a private or group practice first, and someone else can comment on the academic side. And I will say, when you are looking for your first job, you have to make sure when you go into negotiations, you have a list of what your non-starters are, the things you absolutely have to have. I can almost guarantee you're not going to get everything on your wish list. But if your situation is you need to be able to have 2 weeks off together because you have to leave the country to see family, then make sure you negotiate your vacation carefully. When you go into perhaps private practice position, what we are looking for is people who are willing to take call, because there's a lot of call in my world. And there's more call in private practice than there is in any academic position. So make sure you recognize as you go in what the perspective of the job you're looking for is. So what we look at, we're looking at money, call, CME, vacation time, etc. When you're looking to negotiate in private practice, you have to have listed what your non-starters and what your flexibility is. You never go in with your bottom offer of what you absolutely could do no better than that, or you're going to walk away because they're going to go below what your first thought is. They will offer you every time they offer something. That is not their best offer either. Do not think they're going to give you everything up front. So have some give and take, and everyone is expecting that up front. The other thing I will say is be very recognize that you're not going to get $400,000 a year with 4 days of call, never see any general surgery patients, and 3 weeks vacation. That does not happen in private practice. I would love that job and I will take it from you. That just does not happen. So you have to have realistic expectations, know the environment, recognize who you're walking into. If you're in looking in group practices or private practice, it is a scary time for us to take on partners. And we have to have a discussion on, like, I very much could use help and I am very scared to hire somebody. So we have the catch-22 in that situation. You have to know what you need. So have a list up front, have an open conversation, know what's important to you and your family, and have the conversation up front. And do not take a position or agree to something that you know you'll be unhappy doing, because then you'll be miserable in your first job. So if they say, I need someone to take every third night call, and you know there is no way your significant other, spouse, or kids will tolerate that, then that's not your job, because that is their bottom line of what they need. And I say too many people take jobs just to get one, and 6 months in are looking for another one. And the people that hire you want you to stay for 20 years as much as you want to be in a good spot.
Thank you. I think one of the interesting things with a recent job transition was how much money an institution or a hospital or a practice can lose when a surgeon who's unhappy leaves. It's a big gap. And so kind of making sure you're set up for success in the front end, I think becomes really helpful to prevent transitions and stuff, although they are going to happen for lots of different reasons. And you can't always say no to transitions. It's just, you don't want to be, a transition at 6 months is a very different transition than at 10 years, at least in the academic world. In private practice, you want to be there forever. That's the goal.
Practice, they say it takes 7 years to build a practice. So you want to be in a good spot and a good fit, and you build your practice and continue on, because if you've been building relationships with primary care doctors and have a referral pattern in, and you have an established name in a town, and then you have to move, it's a problem, which is the other thing to be careful for in negotiating contracts. Non-competes. That is, I will tell you, I fought one. They supposedly are hard to enforce. Yeah, that's a big fat lie. They are hard to beat. And so if they write a non-compete well, and you sign one, recognize if you are unhappy in that position, you will have to move out of the city that you just moved into. And so I personally would never recommend signing a non-compete, particularly in 2025. But people still try to slip them in there on you, and so do hospital systems. So careful of what you're signing.
Reading everything you sign is super important for sure. There are horror stories of non-competes. There are horror stories of, oh, it wasn't written down, therefore it wasn't given. Especially, and I feel like I've heard those more in private practice if you're not smart about what that contract looks like. I'm curious, a question, and then get Dr. Dan up next. Did you have, when you first were negotiating your contract or developing your practice, did you have a lawyer or a finance person helping you out, or did you do it on your own?
So when I first negotiated my contract, I was an academic physician in New Orleans. So I started the Ochsner Clinic, and I just took what they handed me because I was perfectly happy to have a job coming out of fellowship. So don't do it that way. When I did my next job, I had a lawyer look at the contract, and I signed the non-compete. So that was my mistake. I took it for granted that I would be there perfectly happy for the rest of my life. And my second job, I was miserable. Within 6 months, I stayed for 3 years so that I could establish myself in town and have enough of a nest egg to fight the non-compete legal battle I knew was coming. When I hire people, I absolutely have an attorney go over the contract to make sure it has what I want, where they can't wiggle out of it. So it goes both ways, as the employer and the employee.
Makes perfect sense. Dr. Dan, I know negotiating a contract can be different depending on your institution. I know you're in a more of a hybrid practice. So how does it differ for you, or what recommendations do you have?
Yeah, so exactly, Shaina. There's private practice. There's the highly academic, and I don't want to say it in any way that means anything, but the ivory tower type of situation, right? Where, look, we have a contract, it's a page long, and you're going to sign it. It's exactly the same for everybody. And then there's where probably about 75% to 80% of us live, is in that hybrid world where you might have some affiliation with a medical school. You might be part of a medical group. You may be part of a health system. And there's definitely benefits to that. There's definitely drawbacks to that. In Colleen's situation, she's the boss. She calls all the shots. And the downside to that is she's the boss. She calls all the shots, right? When the lights have to be paid, when the rent has to be paid, when a new partner has to be paid, she's last on the docket, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Colleen, but that's what comes with private practice. The nice thing about a hybrid system is that you can come to work and be a doctor and not have to worry as much about the things that come with it, contract negotiations with insurance companies, buying equipment, keeping up the building, etc. But you do have to give up some stuff in your contract. So it's important to remember that this is where supply and demand is going to play a huge role, and you may not get all the things that are absolutely most important to you. And as you get started, you may have to participate in some general surgery call. You might have to make sure that you bring your employer whole as far as the money they give you, especially in a guarantee. So they're going to make sure that you're busy because they want to get that money back. There'll be billing on your behalf while you do the work, and then you get your contractual salary. So, yeah, it's kind of the best of both worlds, the worst of both worlds. But you do have to make sure that you look into what fair market value is for your region. So be ready to have the numbers ready. And there's various national organizations. Probably the most famous one is the MGMA that publish those. You know, the ASMBS also recently did a survey of surgeons across the country and has some really good and probably more accurate numbers from the surgeon standpoint in terms of what it means to be a surgeon, to have a surgical practice in each part of the country, and type of practice, what fair market value is. If you have those numbers, then you have some idea of what the ballpark is, and then you see what the supply and demand is at your own organization, what the other benefits of the job are, and you can at least have some idea rather than just going in there blindly and letting them dictate what the starting negotiation point is. So MGMA publishes all that. It's easy to see. There's a few other ones out there that you can look at, and they're different for the East Coast, West Coast, for the Midwest, South, urban, rural, etc. Other things, contract lawyers. When I first started, gosh, almost 20 years ago, my partner and I did get a contract lawyer, and I'm not sure how much it helped in our situation. I think the best person to look at a contract, now that I understand all the details, I know what RVUs are, I know how much vacation I should get. I know what dollars per RVs mean. I know the MGMA numbers. It's somebody who's an experienced surgeon, because a lot of times the contract lawyers know legal talk, but they know very little about what it means to be on call 1 out of 3 nights. That doesn't sound that bad, right? On call, you're just chilling at home watching TV, no stress. If you don't get called in, wrong. Comes with a lot of stress. It's even if you don't get called in, lots of phone calls, lots of lost sleep over, did I make the right decision? Should I have gone in? They don't know any of that. They don't know what your family situation's like. You have small kids. Will your spouse be okay with you being on call so much? So, yeah, have somebody you trust that's more senior look over your contract. I think it goes a lot further than what a lawyer can do. And I think that guy bought a new vacation home with what we paid him. Um, but I'm not sure how much it helped me. And sometimes there are situations where, yeah, that's just the way it is. If you're going to work for the big mecca, that's your one-page contract. That's what everybody gets. There's the place where they have one other surgeon, they desperately need another one, and you can kind of call your own shots. And then there's everything in between where there is some room for negotiation. So that's my take on the various aspects, Shaina, of getting a contract. It's not all the same for everybody.
I'd love to get Dr. Sharif and Dr. Husain's thoughts here. I know Dr. Husain, you put a couple messages in the chat, but what I think they went to maybe just the panelists. So tell me what you're thinking, and then Dr. Sharif.
When your age shows when you can't even chat correctly, but sorry to the audience. I was just saying, I think there was a question out there about when to start contract negotiations. during the process. And the first interview, generally, I would probably say it's not the time. I think of the first interview is just when we're starting to get to know people and figure out if it's even a good fit. And I think when you're getting to know them, you don't want to be like, so how much are you going to pay me? Not that any of you would go at it like that. But when you come back for a second interview, that's generally going to be the time when you're both parties are saying, hey, we have a serious consideration here. We do think we could be a good fit. And then it is very much a good time to start talking about some of your contract considerations. That's when I try to make sure that I'm definitely meeting with some of the people on the business side, because you'd be surprised, depending on, again, your employment pattern or how you're working, who is making some of the decisions for the contract. It's not always the person you think, but if there is an MBA or business type person associated with the practice, they may have more pull than you think about certain things. So talk to them all, start to get some ideas about what are important to you. I like to set out my deal breakers pretty early on, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time negotiating if they can't meet my bare minimums. And so I think it's making a list of what are your deal breakers so that you don't spend a huge amount of time and waste everyone's time and your own in a potential contract that won't go anywhere. And then know the institution or the group that you're working with. Like Dr. Dan said, some places have a boilerplate contract. They really don't change it at all. It's like 2 or 3 pages. It's exactly the same for everyone. There's not as much negotiation there with that. Other places will have much more flexibility.
Dr. Shariff, what are you thinking?
Hey, a couple things. First, everything is negotiable. Your salary, your sign-on bonus, loan forgiveness, relocation fee, all of those you can negotiate first. And then I second what Dr. Dan said, get your data. MGMA can cost a lot. It's about, I think, $1,000 to get your specific data, but it's money well spent. And then use Resolve or any other contract negotiation lawyers, especially for your first time, because there are so many things that you don't know that you don't know. So I would recommend that. The next thing that you want to establish is how they're going to make you successful. Just because they give you a job doesn't mean you're going to be successful, right? The first 2 years, they're all going to make sure that you have a salary. But again, they're watching your RVUs at that point. Most of places have an RVU target, unless you're in a great academic place. They're actually watching how many RVUs you need to make. And is there any stipend for teaching? Like I am in a place where we have residents, and so, do you get that? How are they going to compensate for those? Then, are they going to have or help you kind of establish a practice in what for advertisement? Is there a budget for that? And then you also want to know what your partners have been doing. How much RVUs are they generating? And then what is your support staff? You can go to a place, but then if you're going to be on call 1 in 5, that's fine. But if you have to go for every ED call in there, I don't think you'll have a good quality of life. So look at all the little minute details. And I know once you have all of these established, the deal breakers are not really going to be your benefits, but it's good to know your benefits. Okay, so if you're a nonprofit 403B, do they have a 457? Are they going to match those retirement plans? And what is your dental plan or your health insurance going to look like? So once you've gone, I would say kind of like everyone else has said, maybe you'll get what 70 to 80%. You can have your non-starters, but once you have all of those things, then you want to look into other details. That's what I wanted to add. The other thing that I wanted to add to the first question where we were, how do you find a job? If you are interested in an area, I would start cold calling. What's the harm? I mean, someone's going to say, no, we don't have a job, but then they at least know you're interested. So every place has physician recruiters. Just cold call them and say, hey, listen, do you have a job or not? And you can get interviews that way.
I did cold call a bunch of people when I first started. I remember looking around the country. I got very few messages back, I will admit, at the beginning. And then, interestingly, the jobs became available a year, 2, 3, 4 years later. And so keeping up those connections and making sure you continue to cultivate relationships in a positive way can be really helpful for the first job, or if it doesn't work out, the second job. While we want to all get it right the first time, sometimes we don't. Sometimes there are growth opportunities where transitions happen. Actually, most people will transition at least twice in their career. As surgeons, and I think that's irrespective of academics or not. The ivory tower academics, yes, you're going to get your boilerplate contract. And most places are also going to give you an offer letter, and that's where the negotiation starts. So everything is still negotiable for academics as well. I would encourage even negotiating benefits. The things that you may not be able to negotiate as much are going to be your call, your vacation. Certain things are kind of standard for everybody, but your bonus structure, your RVU targets, all those things are negotiable. And many academic institutions, if they haven't gone there yet, are now setting RVU targets for kind of productivity. You go into academics, most people don't go into academics as 100% clinical surgeon. They're going in as especially your first job out, 0.8 or 0.9 FTE, meaning you're protecting 10 to 20% of your time for something else, whether it's education, research, quality improvement, administration, kind of whatever your focus of the lethal triad is, where nobody's the perfect surgeon, researcher, and education person. There's all sorts of other stuff. So you're going to have a little bit of protected time, but with that protected time, that should buy down your RVUs. And so you got to make sure you understand what that all looks like. And then many places, as they go to RVU targets, your bonus becomes your compensation for your academic productivity. So understanding what the bonus compensation looks like. Every institution does bonus compensation differently. And some places are super transparent and some places aren't. And so understanding how that works, not only from the surgeons that are interviewing you, but the business department, to Dr. Husain's point, is really important. I think the big thing I would want to make sure that you guys know is going into any kind of negotiation and any interview as you're thinking about jobs is be prepared. Even if you're getting out of a case and you're like, crap, I am running to this interview, then prepare 5 minutes ahead of time, but probably the night before, review your notes ahead of time. I have actual worksheets that I used for every negotiation. Because when you're thinking about, and it's worth it, what are my interests? What is the institution's interest or the person I'm negotiating with? Because there's two sides to every conversation, and that are kind of obvious, the words. But then there's another two sides. It's how I perceive their words and how they perceive my words. And all that plays into how that negotiation goes. And so you want to make sure you're prepared for that. So also to the couple of points, know what your BATNA is, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What is you have your list of this is what I want, but what are you okay with and comfortable with? Because if you don't get your want, then you're going to be saying, well, okay, we can't do this, and this is what I need to do the job well. It's going to be important. And so practicing that, irrespective of whether it's your first negotiation or your 100th negotiation, doesn't matter if it's your first job out, you should negotiate. I think any other thoughts, comments, questions on negotiation? We have lots of really good conversations about what's the next steps after that. How do you prepare once you get the job?
So the only thing I want to add on negotiation, as I'm sitting here in like the unique location, if you are, so I do a lot of stuff outside of clinical practice, as y'all see my face all over the place. But if you are very interested in doing a lot of research, academic stuff, not really academic, but I call it my academic side, meeting stuff, talking, visits. If you like private practice, which I love private practice, I love not having a boss, recognize going in, if you love the independence of private practice, but you still want to do a lot of this national stuff or local group stuff or get involved with all of it, because it's fun, believe it or not, it's fun. None of that is paid for when you're in private practice. And so when you're doing your negotiation for your contract and stuff, and I ask people who come meet with me, would you be interested in moving up and going through on the national scene? Do you want to do this kind of stuff in the private practice setting? Because people know that I do it. And but it's not paid for. And so when you are looking at it, we don't have protected time. We don't have money for that. And so that is something that when you're in private practice, if this is something of your big interest, recognize that you're doing it just to feed your soul, not to feed your pocket. So you have to have that realistic look. And the extra hours you do for,
reviewing abstracts or writing book chapters or reviewing articles for the board. That's just to keep your soul happy. It doesn't do anything to pay your bills, but it is a big part of my life and it is important to me to do it.
Yeah, Shaina, I want to also kind of echo what Colleen said. Even in the hybrid models, you may be doing some of that stuff and you may get not necessarily compensation for it, but you may get, some stipends for it, part of your, I consider it part of being a fellowship director, core faculty, all those things, but it's not necessarily appreciated. So if you do those things, don't do it for the money and don't do it for the fame and the glory. Do it for the right reasons, right? You should be able, like Colleen said, feed your soul and say, I served, I checked the box, I did my part to grow our specialty. And those are the real reasons that will keep you active on that scene, on that level, without saying, gosh, but I didn't get paid for it. And yeah, it's going to cost some money when you're in private practice. One more interesting thing, we had I remember a few years ago was a program planning committee, and someone said, hey, you know what, it would be really great to have a course on private practice. And it was just so funny because of about 20 people in the room, the 10 that were in private practice thought that was, yeah, great, we can warn people about why you shouldn't go into it. And the other 10 that were in non-private practice was like, oh, great, I can't wait to figure out how I can do it. So yeah, the perception is different depending which side of the fence you're on, but it's it's the Wild West, and I really have a lot of admiration, appreciation for folks like Colleen who take it on and still keep that as an option.
There's my moment. I forgot to unmute myself. Great points, team. Thank you guys so much. I was hoping maybe we could talk about, okay, we're talked about negotiation 3 different ways. Dr. Wilson, how do you prepare for your practice? What were those key learning points for the first few years for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think the most intuitive thing I think would be to really be a sponge and just realize that you can learn from so many people around you. So utilize your resources, your mentors, but also, your partners, office management, administrators, depending on your practice. There are a lot of people who can support you. So I think first just know, okay, what you took in your training, what you learned, expect to change things as you go. So, if you're getting your cases, first of all, how do you get those cases? Does your program automatically kind of draw those patients in for you? You don't really have to market yourself. Being at Cleveland Clinic, I have to make an effort to market myself, but I don't really have to because they just come and we just get a portion of the people. But it's not like that everywhere. So be aware of kind of what your resources are, but we still have a marketing team. So on the east side, hey, I think we can get more patients here. I think we might be missing out. So you have marketing team resources potentially. So see how you can, first of all, get as many patients into your office as possible. Your template for clinic, is it optimized so that people can be scheduled into your clinic? How long are your visit times? These are things I never knew about. But there are a lot of ways to adjust your schedule to get more types of patients, whether it's general surgery or bariatric surgery. In the background, there's a referral base. And so you have to say, I'm open to doing all of these types of procedures. So if people have need for these types of appointments, put them in my clinic. So there's a back office and your managers can help with that. Of course, marketing yourself. Who are your referring providers? Do they know about you or who you are? Maybe they know your practice partners, but they may not know you. If you have time early on and things are slower, can you go give a talk at a lunch? Do you have support to introduce yourself to folks as another friendly face? Hey, I'm here for you. If you ever need this, here's my card, here's some information. But once you're, I guess, establishing your patients and the types of cases you're doing, really expect to grow and change. First of all, prepare for your clinic. So look at your clinic ahead of time, not the day of, like, all right, who's here, who's coming? Look at your clinic, who's being put in your clinic. Are these appropriate patients? Or, okay, this patient, maybe you might see patients who are just out of your comfort zone or your comfort level, like, ooh, BMI is really high, or there's an associated hernia. Is this a patient that you can see and maybe ask a partner to scrub the case with you if you do want to book the case, but you want some help? So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask those around you, partners, support staff, how you can grow, what the expectation is, and then what your goals are. And you can compare those things. And then, of course, new procedures, different techniques, different technologies, they're always going to be introduced. So 5 years out from your training, 10 years out, don't expect to be doing your bypasses the same way. You may find a more efficient way, or your hospital may have different equipment than what you used to use, or the staff and support, you may have a PA helping you every day versus you may have residents, or you may have fellows. So your help might change. And so how does that change your technique? And so I think not only preparing for your clinic, looking ahead of time, trying to be intentional about what patients you're seeing, but as you are perfecting your craft as a surgeon, also not being afraid to test the limits, change your technique, maybe push the limits appropriately. So I've had combo cases with my partners where we've done things together, and that's helped me maybe incorporate a little cases that are a little tougher that I was once uncomfortable doing. Now I can do them on my own just because I wasn't afraid to ask for help. And so I think those are some things, but expect to grow. Do you have industry support around you? Or do you have, reps from different companies? Can you host dinners with them, or do they have courses they can send you to learn different techniques or learn about different technologies too? There's a lot of support in that direction. So there's so many things to consider when running your clinic, starting up your practice, but really expect to grow in the positive direction, expect to change, be open to that, and be open to learning, I think, from everyone around you. And that's kind of a general answer, but I'm sure my colleagues have specifics too.
My one big addition, and I'd love to hear others' thoughts. When I first started, I think one of the most impactful things I've done was sit and meet everybody individually, one-on-one, that I was going to work with, irrespective of level, especially for my clinic staff. Because a lot of times especially in training, when you go to clinic, it seems it's like a chore. Nobody wants to go to clinic. And in fact, clinic is what feeds the need, right? Most of us are addicted to surgery because they want to go to the operating room, not because they want to go to clinic. But the clinic is what's going to feed that. And you want to make sure you're setting it up for success, and that your team members you understand how they work and they understand how you work. So like for bariatrics, sitting down and working with listening to how your dietitians counsels, and actually if you're able to listen to how your psychologist counsel, sit with the teams and understand how the process works. With many places you're going to be walking in and they've been doing it a certain way for a long time. It's probably best to learn how they do it first before you say, let's change everything up. It'll build you some political capital. And to be fair, to kind of Dr. Wilson's point, you may learn something different that works better, actually. And I think learning not only from our partners, but then the staff, whether it's the admin, the office manager, other clinicians in different specialties, can be really helpful and impactful to your clinical work and clinical volume. I found I got a lot of referrals actually because of the first 3 hours I spent with a couple dietitians. They're like, oh, you're struggling, you should call Dr. Eckhouse. Because I had put my name, I just sat down with them and listened. And so I got all sorts of interesting, bariatric revisional patients, which I love. And that's what I want. So it's perfect. Any other thoughts to add to Dr. Wilson's comments?
Okay, can I go? I think there were 3 A's that someone told me that you need to pay attention to: being able, being affable, and available. So when you first go into your practice, I think the number one thing that you need to pay attention to is developing your reputation. You want to be a safe surgeon. Once that reputation goes and your PCPs are saying that you're doing a good job, your referrals will start. Being there and kind of like exactly like what you guys said, meeting everyone. But again, if the patient doesn't do well, you're not getting patients from them being referred to you. So being a safe surgeon, knowing how much to bite initially is important. But at the same time, don't be so hesitant to kind of push the bar, right? Then you want to start creating a niche for yourself. Like in my practice, what I did was they were not doing robotic surgery. So I brought in robotics. What that allowed me to do is bring SADIs and DSS and then moved on to spy glasses. Now that's where the industry comes into play and can help you a whole lot. And leverage all these wonderful people on the screens. I don't know how many times I've called you guys to, for help. And again, if you're in the OR, you have a different set of people that you can call. If you're outside, you need to have this connection. But reputation and brand is very, very important. You need to establish that earlier on. Because if you have few complications earlier on, getting back from that is going to be super hard. It's the only other thing I would like to add.
Really great
I
points.
just want to do one. Can I make one more comment?
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting yourself known, so to get business when you start, you have to get yourself known. I mean, I would go in and I hate eating in the doctor's cafeteria at the first hospital, but you go in and you introduce yourself to the other physicians in a casual atmosphere. You're in the lounge, you introduce yourself to other surgeons. I got so many referrals from GYM because I introduced myself and they called me and said, can you help me get this piece of small bowel down? Never say no. Never say no. Something you can help people with, help them. Be pleasant, be helpful. And you end up setting yourself up as someone who is open and available. And as much as you hate it, to your referring people, give out your cell phone number. Text me if you have a question. I can get somebody in. Say yes right away. In the beginning, in my world, you cover all the little lumps and bumps, general surgery stuff as you start going so that the primary care knows that you're going to be responsive to their needs. I can't say it enough. If somebody wants to send you a patient, the answer is yes. Happy to see them. Happy to see them and see how I can help, because then they keep sending you everyone. And it's really gets annoying in the beginning when it's 5 p.m. and they say, can you just get this little IND in for me? Sure. I'll be right here. Send them right over. I will absolutely save them 7 hours in the ER for an IND. They can come to my office right now. And it builds your reputation as someone who will be there. And as a result, you get referrals from everywhere. And it builds your reputation as someone who's helpful and pleasant and doesn't hold themselves above the other fields. Because if the primary care people think you're all that in a bag of chips, you're getting no patients, because they will send them to someone else who is easy to work with.
Yeah, I think that having good outcomes and being available for your consulting physicians. I send a thank you note or my consult note to every single patient or provider, every primary care provider or subspecialist that I want to interact with. I used to send all my operative notes to the primary care providers as well, but I always send a thank you note for their original consultation and their post-op visit. I always send the path. And I make sure, and I say thank you every time. I think it goes a long way. Dr. Husain, I'd love to, you've had some big movements in your career. You've built 2 beautiful programs and now overseeing everything at University of Arizona. For the new fledgling coming out of fellowship, how do you start a program? What if you're going in and being asked to start and that was the job you decided to take? How would you approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm seeing this more and more where people are being asked. I don't know, my lighting is being crazy. Sorry, guys. But you'll be asked to start a bariatric program, get accreditation for a new hospital or facility, et cetera. And that's a big lift. And where I recommend most fellows start is get very familiar with the MBSA QIP standards manual first. If you're looking at that position at all, look at what the requirements are and understand what you need before you start your contract negotiations, if they want you to do that. Because a big part of what your contract negotiations are going to be are, do you have the support for all of the pieces you need to build a program? It's very easy for facilities to say they want a comprehensive bariatric program, comprehensive metabolic and obesity program, but they don't understand what you need to do that successfully. So you have to be the one going in there saying, if you bring me on, I need my dietitians, I need behavioral health support, I need a coordinator, I need a data extractor, et cetera. And if you don't know you need those people, trust me, it's very hard to get people hired on the tail end after you've joined, because they're going to find loopholes for, well, why can't you do that? Why can't someone else just do that? Why can't someone pick up the job? And I have people ask me that regularly now after running multiple programs and knowing that's absurd. And they still will say, well, why can't we just have this APP just start extracting data for us, on the side? It'll be okay. And so read those job descriptions, know them well. And if they want you to build a program, make sure that's built into the contract. There are a certain FTE that will be hired or will be dedicated for each of these roles that is required. Talk to people that have built programs and understand the pain points, understand the time it takes to do it so that they can set that up for their administration. This isn't a thing you do in 2 months and ta-da, you're accredited. This is a 1 to 2 year process to gain accreditation. And if you think you're going to do it faster, everybody thinks they're going to do it faster. You always think, no problem, I'll knock it out, it'll be done, I'm good. I've never had it go faster. I think I've now had at least 4 or 5 hospitals I've had to do accreditation for, and it's never taken less than a year. So you have to do 20 cases in patients that in a non-MBSA QIP facility, and there are many insurances that restrict that patients can only be done in accredited facilities. So you have to find 20 that can be done outside of that. Medicare can often be done outside. Medicare patients are often higher risk. So you are then stuck deciding to do your first 20 cases on patients that might have a higher risk, which speaks to what Dr. Shariff was saying. You want to be cautious and safe, but you also can't be completely risk averse, because then it is hard to build a practice if you will never operate on anyone. And so having a happy medium, if you have a senior partner who can be around to help or mentor you in any way, that's great. But utilize these communities, reach out to folks who have done this before and who can give you a little guidance. What are the safer risks to take on? Which types of patients might be okay to operate on actually in this setting and be less scary and able to be done very safely? So I think if you are thinking at all about taking a job where you have to start a program, get in deep with that standards manual, really read through. You don't have to go through all the sections. Really, it's the first few sections that talk about the requirements for a comprehensive center, low acuity and ambulatory surgery. Understand which one you're going to be, and then look at what's required at each of those centers that you have. And then the next thing is hopefully you have some mentors out there, whether it's in your fellowship, residency, or through ASMBS. Reach out to at least one of them and talk through them a little bit more to get some details. This is something we could probably cover over 10 to 15 minutes, but I know we're a little towards the end of our time, so I don't want to belabor it. But if you start there, that'll get you a good launch. And again, time management, and let them know it's going to take 12 to 18 months before you'll be accredited, and that is normal.
Yeah, you always think it's going to build faster than it will, especially if you're seeing bariatric patients at the beginning who are not ready for surgery, which when they come in to see you, they're seeing you for the first time. It's going to take them 6 months to a year, depending on average, depending on the location. So it's not just going to turn on. It's a drip before. And in this current time, and that I think that faucet is going to take even longer to turn on. No, I think that's really great advice. Any other thoughts on how to start an MBSA Equip program, or how to maybe build into one? Otherwise,
one other thing I wanted to tail on, if that's okay, Shaina, is get to know the culture of your location too, because how you utilize resources will depend a little. You'll have some places that will be willing to hire people into your program. You have other places that won't be as willing, and you have to utilize the resources you have. So try to get a little feel for that too, because sometimes there are resources right where you are that you can use really well. And you don't have to do big hires, but if you fill someone else's templates up with your patients, then it can justify later why you need to hire them. So you've got to figure out that part of the business acumen of where do I have big asks versus where do I use what's already on the ground.
Right. Dr. Shariff, how do I filter the bad information online for nutrition?
That's awesome. Very interesting question. First, I would say check the source, right? You want to prioritize information that is from a reputable organization like academics of nutrition and dietetics, NIH, WHO, ASMBS. I refer all my patients to ASMBS. I said there is a whole public facing domain, and Rickesha Wilson here is the chair of that committee, and they're doing a great job with all this information that's coming out, right? Then assess for authors' credentials. I mean, nowadays, everyone's on TikTok giving any advice and every advice. It takes you 2 seconds to actually go and look at your thing. And then check for the are they practicing? They can say they're board certified surgeon or board certified dermatologist, but they're actually very easy for you to kind of see if they are, they still have the credentials. And then look for scientific consensus and be kind of fact check if this is evidence-based. It's very easy for us to kind of cross-check what's going on. Now, when that question was asked, are we filtering, which I think is easier, or are we asking our patients to do this? Because I think every program, when you're making and building a program, you should have some links on your website to these resources. Your own program should have resources, and then links to ASMBS, links to the Dietitian and Nutrition Academy. And if you're looking for bariatric surgery, what you need to do and all that, like if you want to develop recommendations for your dietitians for your program, I would say, can I share a screen? I just had these. Hold on, let me see if I can do this without messing it up. And you can take a screenshot. Can you guys see this? No?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, the first paper, 2 papers that I would recommend is this clinical practice guidelines from ASMBS. They had one 2019 update. It was with multi-societies. A really, really good paper, which I think every bariatric surgeon should read inside out. And then there is a lot of references to the 2013 paper. So you will have to read both of these. Really helpful. UpToDate does a great job. I think, the authors have done a great job here. And for specific vitamins requirements and all that, the Allied Health ASMBS, Allied Health Nutritional Guidelines is a good one. It asks for, the 24 hours before and after is a really, really good paper. So that one, and all these things for, you have all these specific, requirements just before the pre-op diets, the post-op diets. I would say the pocketbook of to bariatric surgery, which is recommended for the dietitians, is a really, really good resource. That's all I got here.
Well, thank you. It was one of my favorite questions. ASMBS has one of the cool parts about our society is all the integrated health members. Our dietitians are part of our society, and they do some fantastic talks at ASMBS, and they have some fantastic webinars available through asmbs.com if you're a member. And so utilize those resources and all those the guidelines that have been published previously that Dr. Shariff mentioned are also available on the website as well. So these are resources that can really help you, that are vetted to ward off the evil information that is Dr. Google. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for a jam-packed hour. There was one final comment I wanted to get from Dr. Dan, and I'm going to let him close today, and our fellows happy hour, or fellows project. Ooh, I said happy hour, didn't I?
Well, I just want to say that there's also integrated health professionals that have given talks on this very program on the Fellows Project and the Happy Hour. And one other thing I want to add that comes to mind, echoing what Rickesha said, is your first 5 years of practice, you're going to learn more than you learned in residency, and you're going to answer questions. And I see a lot of heads nodding because people on this panel have experienced that. You're going to ask questions when you're on your own that you don't even think of asking now. Oh, I don't have any help. I never thought of this. The other thing that's probably a good thing to part on is don't let the highs get too high. Don't get the lows get too low. I always hear Shaina say, You're only as good as your last complication, right? There's going to be some dark moments. Don't get discouraged. There's going to be some moments when you're going to feel very high and you're on top of the world. Don't get complacent and overconfident. And I think that's a good way to keep it even keel and get through those first 5 years when you show up to work one day and say, you know what, I kind of got this. I think I'm okay. I know when to ask for help still. And even 20 years into practice, I have junior and senior partners that I call in and say, hey, can you take another look at this? Tell me what you think. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of good judgment. So good luck to you all. And that's all I got to say. And we'll kick it back to Shaina.
Thank y'all very much. We are finishing on time. Really appreciate your engagement. Next month, we'll actually be bringing some of our integrated health members to talk about the psychological portions of bariatric surgery and obesity. Y'all have a wonderful February.